Hi, and welcome to our weekly River Guide Professionalism series. My name is Zach. This is something I'm trying to do on a weekly basis to just bring speakers from outside to talk about professionalism, safety, first aid, whatever I can. I think it's something that's fun for me because it's easy for me to do. I can just talk to a friend and say, "Hey, want to come and give a talk?" And they'll give a presentation, and I can share information with all of you that are interested. But it's a great chance for me to learn as well. It's something I'm super excited about. I'm always like, I feel like I'm a really good guide, and I'm always trying to improve my own skills. And this is an opportunity for me to like get feedback from others and just keep learning. So this is continual learning, and it's free through this fun new tool. And today I'm joined with my friend Mark Hirst, and Mark's been having some technical difficulties getting his keynote going. Mark, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Cool. Yeah, I can hear you now. Just double checking. And so we may or may not have a keynote presentation, but I wanted to bring Mark on. Mark is a guide training instructor for the International Rafting Federation. He's a rescue instructor for Rescue 3. He's just finished an ice rescue course. He's up in Finland. He's somebody I have a lot of respect for, and I feel like every time I'm around him, I learn something. And he was nice enough to join us for a talk about river safety talks, which I know, Mark, you're calling them river safety demonstrations, which I'm super excited about, that using that terminology more. So with that, I want to welcome Mark. And if anybody has questions as this goes, just ask the question in the comments, and I might interrupt Mark, but we'll probably won't interrupt him, and we'll wait till the end. And Mark, as we do this, I'm gonna try to figure out how to get your PowerPoint going here.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So thanks for having me, Zach, and just respect for you for trying and doing the things that you do. It's great to work with you. Yeah, I call it a safety demonstration. The age-old adage of actions speak louder than words. So for me, the safety demonstration should be 80% practical demonstrations, 20% verbal input. We do this a lot in Europe because we're dealing with rafting guests. You can have a trip with multiple rafting guests where you have maybe 4 or 5 different languages, and there's not a common language between the guide team and all of the guests. So actions speak louder than words. So that's why we call it a safety demonstration as opposed to a safety talk. And plus, when people hear safety talk, people don't like to be talked to nowadays. You know, the style of learning changes, and people want to see, they want to get hands on. That's why we've got a safety demonstration.
So Mark, just to interrupt really quick, I'm having a hard time making your PowerPoint work, so you may have to do it without that. I'll just show you. I'll show you what it does. It shows a blank screen for some reason. So everybody out there, we apologize. We're still learning how to do a lot of this technology. But Mark, you're going to go without that for now, if that's okay. And yep, and I'll just manage comments and let you take it over. And but I just want to say, like, I want to interrupt with one thing. When you taught, did my guide training examination, you had somebody volunteer. Oh, it's podcast coming up. Cool. Yeah, you had somebody volunteer to do a safety talk without talking.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not sure if I volunteered or you volunteered me, but I had to basically show my safety talk without using words. And it was hard, but it was also really good practice. And after that, you mentioned using the word safety demonstration, and I'm all into that. I'm really excited that you're headed that direction and trying to change the lexicon on what's happening out there.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, I did a presentation at the World Rafting Summit last year in Costa Rica, and I had to stand up in front of 200 people and give a presentation on giving a silent safety brief, and it really makes the guides aware of the content they're delivering, and it minimalizes the safety talk down. What I find is that when you have guides that naturally speak English, when they're doing a safety demonstration, they add in a lot of really unnecessary information, and by taking away the power of them to speak, they concentrate more on getting the message across. So it works, and it'll shave 5 or 10 minutes off the safety demonstration.
Cool. Well, I'm going to go on mute and let you take over, and I'll manage questions at the end.
All right, cool. All right, so Here we go, folks, and this is all for, this is all up for discussion. This is my personal views, not necessarily the views of the IRF. This is my personal views, and yeah, let's go through it. So over the next few minutes, let's discuss who delivers the safety demonstration. Are there any hidden messages that we need to get across within a safety demonstration? Assessing a safety demonstration, so dipping into looking at the quality of a safety demonstration from the guides, and for me there's two main areas. And then I call it the flow and the grouping of the subjects to make sure that we get all the subjects falling into place at the right time. We'll also have a bit of a talk about when does a safety demonstration end and how. And from my personal perspective, I can, during the summertime, I can be assessing 10, 15 safety demonstrations from different guides per week. And I get to see a lot of common mistakes that happen in safety demonstrations globally around the world. So that's some of the issues that I want to discuss in this presentation. So within your safety talk demonstration, are there any hidden messages? We have a huge chunk of technical information that we have to get across, but there's a few other things that we need to discover as well to consider. We want to look at our body language, our visual presentation, our vocabulary, and when we're doing a safety demonstration, you're putting yourself up on a stage. You're setting your shop stall, your stand for the trip. So getting up and doing a safety demonstration, looking rough, hungover from the night before, with shades on so people can't make eye contact with you, wearing really poor PPE, dangerous PPE, you're building a picture of yourself and your trip to your guests. So for me, the safety demonstration isn't just about the words, it's the camera lights action, it's how you present yourself, it's where you position everything. And as I've said, it's the shop window of your trip. If you give a good safety demonstration, you're setting yourself up for a good trip. So something I like to say is poor safety demonstration. So normally if the guests receive a poor safety demonstration, they're going to have a poor trip. A good safety demonstration, you're setting your stall, you're meeting the customers, you're just finding out the customers' expectations, you're giving them as much information about the trip as possible, which is probably going to lead to an awesome trip. So I've spent a number of years working in Iceland on a Class 4 Plus river, and at the start of the season every year we get new guides that come in, and their safety demonstration, they will use the words, if you swim. When we're working on a Class 4, on this Class 4 river, pretty much it's guaranteed that all the customers are going to swim. So we make the guides change their vocabulary to when you swim. So we're giving the customers the expectations that we expect that they're going to swim. We're front loading with as much information as possible. So within the safety demonstration, just to summarize this now, there are a lot of hidden messages that we give across. So my top tips are act professional, be professional, walk the walk, and it sets the tone throughout your entire trip. And you give an unprofessional safety demonstration, your trip, you're just setting yourself up to fail. So when I'm looking at the safety demonstrations of other guides, when I assess them, I can be doing a formal assessment, but I also ask the guides to think about their demonstrations. And for this, I split the safety demonstration into two areas. The first area is the technical content. Is the technical information about the safety demonstration, is it in line with the current best global practice guidelines? So are we teaching and are we instilling the information that is best global practice? A classic example of this is a throwback demonstration. If if you think about a commercial raft guide that gives a throwback demonstration, they give their entire safety demonstration from being sat inside the raft. And they take their throwback out and they say, if we swim, we throw you a rope. Or if we think you're going to need a rope, we're going to throw you a rope. Now, if you have a guest that doesn't speak English or doesn't speak the same language as the guide, the guest is going to see the picture of a raft guide stood inside a boat throwing a flip line, throwing a throw line. So the picture they're going to get in their head is if they fall out of the boat, the guide is going to bag them from the boat, which isn't really best current global practice. What tends to work in most of the areas around the world now is we just tell the customers to try and get back to the boat and we chase after them with the raft. So throwing the throwback from a raft isn't best global practice. So in your safety demonstration, don't throw a throwback from inside your raft. So that's just one example. And then I'm looking at the delivery style of the safety demonstration. Is the raft positioned in a place where the customer's sole focus is that raft guide? You know, we're trying to get away with any other distractions. So for the job of the person giving the safety demonstration, he needs to put the guests in a place where they can do nothing but focus on that guide, which then allows him to get the information over in the best way. Classic mistake you see doing this is the boats will be put down next to the water. The guide will be sat in the raft with his back to the water, so the guests are looking to the river. Now, if you're putting on in the middle of a rapid, your nervous guests are going to get the safety demonstration, and they're going to zone in on the rapid where they think, you know, the impending doom is going to happen. They're going to drown. They're going to die. Or if there's other river traffic coming down, they're going to stop focusing on the person giving the safety demonstration, and they're going to watch the rafts coming down. The flip side of that as well is that you also need to position so your guests aren't looking into the sun, and really you want to maximize their comfort, get them as comfortable as possible, explain what you're going to do and why you're doing it. So just to summarize again, when assessing a safety demonstration, or when you're watching a fellow guide, or you're doing a safety demonstration yourself, you want to ask yourself, is my technical content correct to the trip that we're giving? And are my customers in a position where they can receive the most information, and what's the best way for them to receive information? Talk about the safety demonstration, and a lot of guides really struggle with the sequence of a safety demonstration. They get a lot of the subject in the wrong times and the wrong places, and it leaves a very fragmented safety demonstration. So what I've put here is I've put some notes so that you can see this is for my own personal safety demonstration, and I'll just go through these, and this is the order that I put my topics in with my safety demonstration. So when I get my guests, I'll do my guide introductions, the outline of the trip, so the name of the river, the classification, the distance, guide names. I'm double checking for swimming ability and medical considerations. Once I've done that, I'm going to just give a quick reminder of PPE if it's already been done, but we're going to talk about helmets and PFDs and make sure everything's fastened up and don't take anything off. I'm then going to introduce the paddle and the T-piece. Once I have explained the paddle and the T-piece, I will then give the guest a paddle. From that moment on, I've just explained to the guests that do not take your hand off the T-piece. So if I have a paddle in my hand when I'm doing my safety demonstration, I make sure my guests see the fact that everything I do, my hand is on my T-piece. A lot of guides will talk about don't take your hand off the T-piece, and then when you watch them doing a safety demonstration, their hand is off the T-piece, waving the paddle everywhere. So the guests, they're not only listening to what you're seeing, they're watching and they're going to copy everything you do. So when you do demonstration on a safety tour or a safety demonstration, every demonstration has to be spot on and perfect. The demonstration that you give is exactly what you expect on the river. If you give a half-hearted demonstration, you're going to get half-hearted results on the river from your customers. So we talk about T-pieces, how to sit in a raft, and then a paddling demonstration, how to paddle, not paddle commands. We're then going to talk about our close swimmers. So what you're going to do if you're going to take a swim. So the river in Iceland, and there's pictures here in the background, this is glacial water. We're in a box canyon, quite fun, interesting river. Panicked swimmers, we know, make our life harder. And we can't just say to our guests, don't panic. What we're saying to them is, we're telling them what we want them to do instead of what we don't want them to do. So we inform all of our guests, if you fall out of the boat, first thing we want you to do is smile. We tell them to smile. It gives them a chance just to get their composure. Apparently, if you're smiling, it's also very hard to panic. I don't know if this is scientifically proven, but I think it has. So remind our customers the first thing you do if you fall out of the boat is you're going to smile. And then for a close swimmer, we are encouraging the customers to get active in their own rescue. So we encourage our customers to aggressive swim back to the raft. This is where we mentioned aggressive swimming, holding a paddle while swimming, and swimming back to the raft. And then we explain to the rest of the crew members how to pull somebody back inside the raft, or for the customers how to climb back inside the raft themselves. Once we've done close swimmers, we then talk about medium swimmers. They're customers that have fallen just a little bit more than a short distance away. And that's where we're going to feed in, and we're going to start to front load with paddle rescues, T-piece rescues. And again, at the start of that, we're also going to add smile, look around, get back to the raft, and we're going to talk about the reach rescue with a paddle. We're then going to talk about a long swimmer. So you've come out the raft and you're too far away for a paddle rescue, and you're not able to aggressively swim back to the raft. So now we're getting on to the point where we're going to start to introduce whitewater swim position, but again, we remind the guests beforehand, smile. We want to get them in that relaxed state, and what we're doing is we're informing our guests that, you know, swimming is okay. Don't be scared if you swim. It's part of rafting. It happens. A lot of guys will say, you know, falling out of the raft is a bad thing. On this river, we're encouraging people to say, look, if you fall out, relax. It's part of the rafting. So we're talking about whitewater swim position. We're just going over smile again, swimming through features or through wave trains, through hydraulics, how to receive a throw bag, not to stand up in the white water, but most of all, we're telling our guests to get active in their own rescue. A common mistake, or not a common thing that I see with raft guides, and I've actually heard of instances where there's been a death from this. A lot of raft guides will explain, if you fall out of the raft, lie on your back, get your feet up. And this totally depends on the type of river that you're working on and where you're working. But on this river where we're working, we're encouraging our guests to swim back to the raft. So we want our guests to get back. So a lot of guys will say, if you fall out on your back, get your feet up. On this trip, we want our guests back at the raft as fast as possible. So once we've spoke about close swimmers, medium swimmers, and long swimmers, we're going to start to talk about our flip management. So on a safety demonstration, you want to give as many demonstrations as possible. So we're physically going to turn the raft upside down on the land, and we're going to show the picture of an upside down raft so the guests get to see. And we're going to talk about what happens if you're underneath the raft, how to get yourself out, and what to do in the flip. We're giving as many visual demonstrations as possible. We can also make it kinesthetic when we talk about, we give the example of how to do the whitewater swim position. We can make the guests also adapt the whitewater swim position. So not only are the guests seeing, they're also feeling, and they're trying these things on the land. Once we've done the flip management, we're then going to go into the summary of the key points. For myself, when I'm rafting, I call it my big three. But it's one of my guests. If you fall out of the raft, the first thing you're going to do is smile, hold your paddle, swim back to the raft. If you cannot get back to the raft, you're going to smile, hold your paddle, lie on your back, feet up into that defensive whitewater swimming position. If the raft flips, you're going to smile, hold your paddle, get back to the raft and hold the raft. Notice how I said whitewater swimming position. I've heard a lot of guides, and I've just done a blog post on this, a lot of guides will talk about the whitewater safety position. If you fall out of the raft, go on your back and float down the river, this is the safety position, you will be safe. And again, this is not best current practice, because we all know that our rafting guests can fall out the raft can flip, they can go down the river with their feet up, and they can still get themselves into a world of trouble. So we call it the whitewater swimming position. If we're using safety kayakers or safety crafts on the trip, we get then get a demonstration from the safety kayaker. And the last thing we do before we get on the water, we break the guests off into their individual teams, and the guide goes for that raft. The guide then goes through their paddle commands for the trip. And we do this for a reason. The customers are now with the guide that's taking them down the river. So they need to be able to understand his language, his or her language, and their paddle command. Also, we also do the paddle commands just before we get on the water, because that's actually what we want the customers to remember most. There's a high chance they would have forgotten parts of the safety demonstration. They always seem to remember the thing they did last. So the thing we want them to do first, which is paddling, is the last part of the safety demonstration. So my top tip is think about the grouping of the different micro subjects within your safety demonstration. And then the next one is we talk about when does a safety demonstration end and how. And I like to say that for me, the safety demonstration ends at the end of the trip, once we're back at the bus or we're at the takeout. A good guide will be constantly reminding their customers of the key areas of the safety demonstration before they drop into any rapid that might have interesting consequences. So for me, I get to the top of the rapid and I'll say to my guests, okay guys, in this rapid, there's a high chance you will fall out. If you're going to fall out, smile, hold your paddle, swim back to the boat. If you can't get back to the boat, smile, hold your paddle, on your back with your feet up. If the boat flips, smile, hold your paddle, stay with the boat. And we're doing this at the top of every rapid. And we're almost turning it into a mantra. And the guests have heard this 10 times. So they're likely to hold on to the information because it's been repeated to them lots. A good guide will also give a rapid, a safety demonstration of the rapid. So we're going to sit at the top of the rapid. Okay, all right, if we flip in this rapid, swim left, there's a big flat pool. Okay, if we flip in this rapid, you're going to feel a big wave, swim to the right until you get it. So the guide is preloading the customers with what to expect in the rapid and what to do if they fall out. So really giving the customers the heads up before you drop into it. And this happens all the way down the river. So your safety demonstration never finishes. It continues down the river. And then just a few common mistakes as you join safety demonstrations. Really poor client positioning. If the clients aren't paying attention to you, you've lost them. They're not going to retain the information, the key things you want them to retain. Guides giving too many verbal instructions, the customers get fed up of being spoken to and they switch off. Guides not following best current practice within their safety talk. The subjects are in the wrong order. So, you know, this is the raft, guys. If you fall out, lie on your back. And then the next thing they're talking about how to hold a T-piece and paddle. And then from that, we'll go into flipping. And then we'll talk about throwbacks, which is, it just gives this really jumbled message and the information comes in at the wrong points. And by getting the groupings right of your topics, you're going to make everything a lot easier to remember for your guests. There's no summary at the end. So there's no summary of the key points that you want the customers to remember. So I tend to call these safety talks, I call them the copy and paste safety talk. It's a standard raft safety talk that has absolutely no bearing on the trip they're about to take. You know, I see on Monday I can be in Spain listening to a safety talk, and on Friday I could be in Nepal listening to the exact same safety talk. And yes, they're hitting the point, but it has nothing to do with the trip they're about to take, the customers are about to take. So I call this the copy and paste safety talk. So make your safety talk as true and realistic to the trip they're about to take as possible. So they're just some of my top tips from what I see when I'm talking about safety talks, safety demonstrations, and how to give them. Another common mistake I see as well that I've not put down on the slide here is you have guides that have the humor balance, the comedy balance. We like to crack the occasional joke. Sometimes you get guides that can turn their safety demonstration into a stand-up comedy routine, and it just becomes one big joke, and the customers don't retain the information because they're laughing and they're not taking everything seriously, and then obviously they go on the river and stuff does happen. So as a guide for me, it's about reading the expectations of my customers, so I can be looking into their eyes. And if I've got a group of gung-ho bachelors that are coming to us with a ton of energy, I can either, you know, wind them up or I can calm them down. If I look at my customers and I have obvious nervous people, I can soften my safety demonstration a little bit to induce a little bit of confidence. So safety demonstration for me is just, it's the crux of the trip. It's the make or break of the trip. You get your safety demonstration wrong, your trip's off to a bad start. So yeah, let's talk about this, Zach. Over to you.
I'm back. So I've written a bunch of questions down that I have, but we'll get to those in a second. There's a few that come through as we've gone. I'll just put them on the screen. And this one's from Mike Brady about how do we learn about global best practices?
Yeah.
I had the same question. I wrote it down in my notes. I said, global best practices, who sets,
Okay,
question mark,
so
IRF, question mark.
the IRF. So I mean, if we look at, you're going to get whitewater, your best current global practices in whitewater rescue are going to come from your rescue classes, your rescue 3 rescue classes, your rescue Canada classes, your Sierra rescue classes. They're going to give you the most up-to-date, best current practice for water rescue. By attending an IRF workshop with an instructor that has traveled, that has moved around, that has been around the world, you're then going to get to see and hear about best current global practice from around the world. So for instance, a classic, really good global practice that we're starting to see now is, it's not necessarily into in the safety demonstration, is the color of helmets that are used on the river trip. So we're tending to use, if you're a rafting company that's got good equipment and you've got yellow helmets, if you've got somebody with a medical condition or they're a poor swimmer, you give them a red colored helmet. And that's now being adopted as best common global practice within the rafting industry. Get in touch with an IRF instructor, an assessor, myself, send me an email. I do a lot of traveling. So if you understand that, I would happily come back on here in a few weeks so we can talk about best current global practice guidelines. Could be another topic.
But is there a list of them somewhere? Like, hey, these are best global practices, or is it sort of just like what's happening out there in the world?
It's what's happening out there in the world, but you know, I'd like to give this list a crack. It would be good fun.
Let's do that. That would be a great thing to talk about. I mean, I would be so into that because I had these same questions.
The thing that goes into that, the thing that comes into my head straight away is, you know, best current global practice. If somebody comes to you and says, I cannot swim, do you take them rafting, yes or no? What's everybody else in the world doing? It's interesting. That I think there's a micro project just been born out of that question. So Mike, awesome question. I like that.
Yeah, and I think the reason we're doing this live show, what I want to do this more, is because there's so many. There's not like a manual to guiding. There are people that they exist. People have them, but there's no like they're not set anywhere. And so I feel like because of that, the best we can do is communicate ideas and share ideas among people who have expertise, and then make up our own mind from that information. And maybe someday we'll have the best global practices written down. But for now, there's not like a repository of that information.
Global practice that's coming in now, I mean, it's happening in Europe a lot more, is with guide PPE. You know, there's always the clean line principle. But for instance, a lot of places now are clamping down on guides in really warm countries, guiding in chacos or open toe sandals because it's dangerous. You know, stubbing your toe running on a bank, customer standing on your foot, you know, in a place where people are saying, nah, don't wear them. So I'm sure there's a whole host of subjects you could cover in that.
Let's work on that list, because that's a whole. I mean, we could talk about that the whole episode. Our friend Dustin has a comment that I think you'll enjoy.
Oh, risk management demonstration. Nice one, Dustin. I agree with that. Yeah, risk management demonstration. Yeah, I agree. Safety demonstration comes in. I think it's down to the guide's communication skills as well, and how they deliver and how they present themselves. I'm sure myself and Dustin could stand up and talk about a risk management demonstration. Maybe a guide that's not as experienced as myself and Dustin might struggle with saying risk management demonstration. I think again, but if you do say risk management demonstration, one day you're going to get that lawyer in the group who's going to sit there and, risk management demonstration, he's going to pull his waterproof notepad out and start taking notes. I think that'll happen. So, yeah.
Dustin, I'm curious, do you think that because you don't like the word safety in there, right? Like that, because nobody's actually safe. You don't want to use. I agree. We don't have the word safe anywhere in our marketing materials. You know, I don't use that word anymore because I know that what we do is inherently not safe. I get that, and so that's safety talk is the place that we do use the word safe. So are you suggesting eliminating the word there because it's not actually a demonstration about how to be safe? It's a demonstration about how to manage your risk.
Yeah, and I totally agree with what Dustin's saying there. You're not 100% safe. It's why it's an adventure sport. So, you know, we can't say that you're never 100% safe, and it's unfortunately it's that word you hear when those of you that have done workshops with myself. I teach the 3 S's that we don't say. We never say shit, safe, or sorry. You never say shit because you're accepting you made a mistake. You never say sorry because you're accepting responsibility. And you never say safe because your customers are never 100% safe.
I've been using the word responsible a lot. You know, we're going to run a responsible trip, especially in the terms of COVID. You know, I can't say we're COVID safe. That's nobody's COVID safe, but we're really responsible. Like we're working really hard to do this the best we can. But I think the word responsibility demonstration, that doesn't work as well as risk management demonstration.
Risk management demonstration, I like that.
Thanks, Dustin.
10. Well,
another question. I think I read this one earlier. I think what he's asking is if a raft flips, he's saying he has to throw a throw bag from the raft because they never have safety on shore. And his next comment is sometimes they have just one raft, so they can't chase the customers if they flip. I think that's what Ted's getting at.
Yeah. I saw a video last year in Italy of a one boat trip. Now the IRF, we don't support one boat trips. In the eyes of the IRF, one boat trips are a danger and a hazard. So you should either have a 2-boat raft, a 2-raft trip, or a trained safety kayaker or safety crafter on the trip. If anything, if you're operating a 1-boat trip, if anything happens to the guide, what are you going to do with the customers? Who takes care of your customers? So the IRF, we don't condone 1-boat trips. So a 1-boat trip in Italy, and then as soon as you mention a 1-boat trip, you get a lot of people saying, "Can we put 2 guides in the raft?" And it was a fast alpine river. One of the customers fell out, and both raft guides went to throw back the guest who was way downstream, and they were never going to bag them. Both guides throw back at the same time. The guest missed the guest. So you've now got a raft that's out of control. You've got a customer going downstream, and you've got 40 meters of rope in the water. You know, it's just the start of carnage. So for me, going back to the safety demonstration with your guests fall out the boat, you try your best to swim back to the raft. We talk about throwbacks on trips, and we use throwbacks as little as possible. But for me personally, I'm telling my customers to swim back to the raft.
Yep.
Or they can't get back to the raft for whatever reason, get on your back, get to the side and get out, depending on the river, depending where you are.
Yep. This matches a couple of my pet peeves. Like, I don't like the throwbacks from rafts ever. It really makes me nervous. And I even 2 boats I'm uncomfortable with. Like, I like having 3. I mean, if it's an easy river, I think 2 is okay. But as soon as it's hard, even 2 is, if there's hard continuous whitewater, is barely enough.
2 boats, 2 safety kayakers. One boat. If I'm guiding on a class 4 trip and I'm with a good team that I know, 1 boat and 2 safety kayakers is good. 1 boat with 3 safety kayakers is maybe, but again, commercial liability of the trip. It's quite tricky. But yeah, safety kayakers working in pairs so that they can take care of each other's safety. 1 safety kayaker to deal with an issue, and then 1 safety kayaker to keep an eye on the rest.
Yeah. Yep. The safety kayaker can really only help 1 swimmer. So if you flip a boat and you have 5 swimmers, the safety kayaker can usually just help 1. And then you still have 4 more.
You can manage. You can get the help.
So if there's more, I'll pull the questions up if anybody else has questions. But I have a few. I really love how you talk about comprehension as much as you talk about content. I feel like it's not just enough to give the content. You have to give it in a way that people can understand it and take it in. I love that so much. I think it's so important. So my first question is, how long do you think a safety talk should be?
Having come up through the IRF system and taught the IRF system, the IRF say 10 to 11 minutes for a safety demonstration, depending on the river, the level of the river, the attentiveness of the crew, and quite flexible. I don't want to, personally, once it starts going up and over 15 minutes, I know I have a short attention span. So if I start seeing safety demonstrations going up 15 minutes, I switch off. So yeah. 10 to 11 minutes ideally. If we're going up to 15 for whatever reason, if it needs to be covered, it needs to be covered.
And you mentioned the English-speaking guides cover too much. And I know here in the U.S., if I suggest safety talks should only be 10 minutes, a lot of guys will say, that's not even possible. You can't begin to cover everything you have to cover. But you also said that English-speaking guides cover too many things. So what are some examples of things that we cover that are probably too much?
Do your customers need to know that the raft has got 15 or 6 or 7 different chambers, drainage holes? It's made from hypalon. Do they need to know that? No. So there's definitely always little bits of fat that can be trimmed off, and you can still get the important messages across. In my, so that the construction of the raft is one. There's a few you get. But for me, the safety talk is a fine art. I'm always changing, and I've done quite a few in my time.
What about introducing the guides? Like, that's something I used to do, but that's some fat I cut out of mine. Do you feel like it's important to introduce the guides' names?
Yeah, definitely.
What if there's 10 guides? Is there a limit to where you're just like, that's...
Ideally, you could be doing this before you get to the river.
Yeah.
But I'm going through because I'm going to introduce my guides, and then I'm going to I'm going to introduce my guys, do my safety demonstration. I'm going to group my guests into their raft, and I'm going to say, okay, you guys go along with Dustin, you guys go with Zach, you guys go with Aaron, and do that. And then plus also, I was in a situation a few years ago where I was working with a raft guide, quite dark complexion of skin, and we had 2 rafts flip, and I picked up customers from different rafts, and I said to one of the customers, "What's your guide's name? Whose raft are you from?" And the customer turned around and said to me, "I don't know the guide's name. He looks like an Oompa Loompa from the Charlie Chocolate Factory." You can't say that. So again, what's your guide's name is going to help me to work out which boat I need to get them back to. So yeah, I'm introducing guide names.
Okay. You mentioned something I tried to do before, right? Before that safety talk, because I feel like if you have everybody sitting down, you have limited attention. And if you're like, this is so-and-so, this is so-and-so, it's just time. That's something I'm trying to do before, but that's helpful.
Yeah.
Nick has a question. What do you change between your class 3 and 4 talks?
Nothing. I would change anything. You see this a lot. You see the class 2, 3 trip, and the guides will omit parts of the safety demonstration. And Sod's law, Murphy's law, O'Reilly's law says the thing you missed in your safety talk is going to happen. Do rafts flip on class 2, class 3? Yes. So let's talk about flip drum. You don't have to go into as much depth, but you need to cover those points. And again, it's been proven that a guide's gone off on a class 2 trip, he's switched off, he's gone to sleep, the raft has flipped, and he's in the water holding the raft, and he's like, I actually didn't explain what to do with the flip. Or you're on the river, you've saved time. Oh, we're doing a class 2 trip. We're not going to do any surfing. We're not going to get pinned. Let's not teach the high sides. And then you see a guy dropping sideways into a hole. You start surfing, and the guy shouts, jump left, and the crew don't have a clue what he's talking about, and he gets frustrated at it. So for me, I don't miss anything out. I cover all those points because, again, because of you guys in the States, in Europe, we're petrified of being sued. The moment we miss something out, it's going to happen on the trip. The customer's going to say, you didn't tell us what to do if the raft flips. You're opening yourself up. So we go through everything. I know that there's certain companies in the world, Spree Rafting on the Ottawa in Canada with Jim Coffey. His guides do a safety demonstration, and they also have a guide at the back with a paper chip list, and he's going through and he's making sure that all the points are mentioned on the trip. So yeah, I don't.
We do the same thing. We have a guest do it though. Somebody listening to talk, they has a card, they check things off, and to make sure we covered everything. That's the same thing. So I think along with Nick's question, I have a similar question. And you said you said something about having technical content being correct for what you're doing. And so I think instead of having a difference between class 3 and 4, I'm guessing you might have a safety talk that's different for like a class 4 continuous river. You might add some things in, right? Yeah. So I think you're adding technical content based on the style of river. So you have a normal talk, but then if it's really cold, you might talk about cold things. If it's really technical, you might talk about foot entrapments more. So you might add things, not dependent on the class, but dependent on the style.
Yeah, I'm tailoring my safety talk to the trip the customers are about to get. I'm not doing a standard safety talk. This is the trip you've signed up for today. This potentially could happen today. Let's talk about it now. Let's front load you with as much information as possible.
And so do you feel like there's a base level talk, which we just talked about, and you add content? Who decides that content? Is that you as a guide who's traveled around the world because you can? Or is that the company saying, hey, for this specific river, do the normal talk plus these extra 4 things based on the river? Where does that, who decides on that content?
It depends on the operator you're working for. It depends. The company I work with in Iceland a lot of the time, I've done a lot of work with Paddle Nepal out in Nepal, where the owners are operators. They are guides, so they can also contribute to the safety and the knowledge of the trip. But you can go to some rafting companies in the world where the owners are not operators. They can't really contribute too much. So for me, it's up to the guide. But at the end of the day, it's me guiding the people down the river. It's me. I'm the one responsible at the end of the day. It's me that's on the line if anything goes wrong. So I want my customers to get as much out of the trip as possible. And going back to the first slide, I didn't really talk about it too much, but as a trip leader on a trip, I insist in doing the safety demonstration myself. And then that way, as a trip leader, I do the safety demonstration for everybody on the trip. And as the trip leader, I then know that nothing has been missed off. You go to some places where you'll have maybe 18 customers, 3 boats, 3 6-loads, and then the customers will get divided and they'll each get an individual safety demonstration from the guide team. And there might be a day when the guide misses something, doesn't explain how to flip, raft flips, customers don't know what's happened. So as a trip leader, I want to make sure that those customers have got the vital information that they need.
I mean, we have more questions to get to, but I just want to go off that topic because I think about this a lot. I mean, you're obviously very experienced and give an amazing talk, but what about the number 2 guy or woman behind you who never gets that, because you always do it, never gets the opportunity. And then once you leave, they didn't get a practice with your observation. You know what I mean? Like, isn't it nice to have people come in and sort of get that experience with you around?
As a responsible trip leader, someone that's been put in charge of being a trip leader for a company, you're not just a trip leader, but you're the guide trainer, you're training people. So for me, working with those less experienced guys, it's right, watch my safety talk, watch it and watch it and watch it. And then you can say, okay, tomorrow you're going to do the same, and you can watch them do the safety talk. And that's how they get built into it.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Ultimately, as a trip leader, you're responsible though. So you feel the responsibility as a trip leader to make sure the content goes through. So you almost always give it, but occasionally would bring in somebody junior to give it as a training opportunity.
Yeah, I think if you're working for an operation where you're doing two demonstrations per day, you can go stale. And sometimes I know I've done it where I'm doing a safety demonstration. I'm not even concentrating on what I'm doing. I'm like, what am I doing? It's good to break it up.
We have the opposite. We have the opposite problem because we do 10 trips a year, 10 talks. If you're a head guide, you're doing 10 4-day trips a season. So you're only giving it 10 times a year. And so if you could be a 2nd, 3rd, 4th year guide and never ever get a safety talk and then be expected to give one before expedition. So that's where we struggle a little bit.
The benefit of doing an IRF assessment is part of the guide assessment, as you know, if you're happy with safety demonstration. It's definitely, and within the IRF assessment, there are the minimum standards for safety demonstration that must be met.
Yep. No, that was helpful for all of us. Like we all, got the expectations that we went and practiced a bit before we had to do ours in front of our peers. It's, it's one thing to do it in front of guests. I've done so many of them. It's like, it's pretty easy, but when you're doing it in front of your peers, it makes you really nervous because you want your peers to respect you and like you. And if you make a mistake, you can lose the respect of your friends and your peers. So it definitely added that nervousness element for sure.
Yeah.
So Dustin has another question.
Again, going back to, good question, Dustin, going back to a mini safety demonstration above a rapid. I won't say in this rapid there is wood, there is a strainer. This is how you swim over a strainer. I would definitely look at the line that I'm taking in a rapid, and I would say to my customers, if there's a strainer on the right, I'm saying to my customers, you swim left. And I'm making them repeat to me, you swim left. If there's still a chance that someone might drop into some wood, on the trip, I say, look, if you get anywhere near the wood, do this. But your number one goal is to get left. So for me, once I start telling a customer how to swim in a strainer, it's already too late because they're going to be in there. So I'm avoiding, and I'm putting avoidance in saying, if you fall out in this rapid, you get left. If we swim with the strainer on the right.
Would you ever cover it in a safety talk?
I've seen it done. Me personally, I don't put strainers into safety talks. For me, it's down to good guiding. One, making sure you get the right line, and two, if there is a chance there's a strainer, you get your customers to swim as hard as you can. Put some downstream safety on the strainer. If it's a known strainer and you're running on a commercial trip, why haven't you been down there and tried your best to get it out? Go down there with chainsaws, get together with a group of guides from other companies that work on the same stretch of river and work out how to get that wood out of the trip if it's possible.
Mark, when we do our trips in Idaho, our 6-day trips, there are strainers, and chainsaws are illegal in the wilderness, and we're not allowed to just go pull out trees, actually. So we do work around strainers quite a bit. But I'm with you in that I don't do my safety talk, but as a guide, when I know wood is coming, I talk about it then in the boat. Because if they heard about this 4 days ago in a talk, they may not know. But I know there's wood up there. I'm like, hey guys, there's wood. Swim right.
It's going back to what I just said again. It's per rapid. You can do this overall safety demonstration at the start of the trip, and then just micromanaging it, breaking it down on the way down the river.
I like what you said about the safety talk never ends, or the safety demonstration never ends. You're continually providing. I like the idea. It's not just there's not a talk and you're done. There's a demonstration and then continued communication about it. All right, I have a couple.
Go.
I'll put up one more question. That I've Halder. I'm really excited to meet you someday, Halder. He's seen a flip investor. I don't know what that means.
Yeah,
but...
me too. I've seen two. I've seen a few flips on that river. Have I flipped? No, but yeah, I work on the river that he's talking about because obviously I've spent time in Iceland with him, and I know that river, and I've seen shocking safety talks on that river, and I've seen absolute carnage on that river because the guys flipped the rafts. So yeah, plus 2 flips are the worst ones because people just aren't expecting it.
Yep. I think they've seen some companies do safety talks as by boat and some by group. And I hear what you're saying about it's better to do it, the trip leader do it for the group. Is the group size too big? Like what if, I've seen some companies where a trip leader is giving a talk to like 40, 50 people. Is that adequate or should it be broken up?
It depends on the ability of the trip leader. Years ago I was working on the Shuttle River in New Zealand and we're doing 10 boat trips, potentially 60 people. And if you've got a good trip leader who is the type of person that can stand there and do a safety demonstration for 60 people and have them all arranged in a place where they can maximize the focus on that instructor, do it. But that's a special type of trip leader that can stand up and do it for the people.
All right, Mike has a question. How do you communicate to guests when they should turn over and swim aggressively versus stay on their back with feet downstream?
So for me, I've always worked historically with lots of safety kayakers, and normally the safety kayakers are in and around doing that for me, and then I'm front loading for the guests if they do swim. Part of my safety demonstration is get up, look around. If you can see the guide, and if he's pointing and telling you what to do, pointing positive, do that. I generally say to the guests, if you see your goal, if you know where you're going to, get on your front and aggressively swim. If you're simply swimming down a rapid until you can get to that place you need to be, roll over on your back, get a big deep breath.
It's a hard one to communicate, I think. That's a good question, Mike. It's really hard to do.
Yeah. You see guys attempting to cover it in a safety demonstration, but actually if I've got a customer going down a rapid and I'm doing a chase, I'm screaming at my crew, I'm telling my crew to paddle forward and I'm guiding the raft to get to them as quickly as we can. And then again, if you fall out the boat, swim back to the boat. If you cannot get back to the boat, on your back with your feet up. So you're giving the guest the power to use their own judgment to make a decision for themselves. And we're we're empowering the guests to make their own decisions. Iceland, where Haldor's from, was a river down there, and a guest fell out of the raft. He was told, if you fall out of the raft, lie on your back. feet up. Unfortunately, there's a very windy day, and the distance between the guest and the raft was huge because the raft was paddling into the wind, and the guest didn't do too well, hypothermia and stuff. So yeah, you've got to empower your guests to make the right judgment call.
Why you didn't see my Iron Man safety talk or my Avengers team safety talk, and I'm bummed you didn't get to see it because I'm really proud of it. But it all started with what I thought of to answer this for guests, and it's not perfect, but I like it. Is I tell them if they fall out, to immediately get their feet up. Where we work, foot entrapments are something I worry about. So get your feet up, be in a defensive spot, and then look for a guide. And the guide will point positive. And I would say that guide is like Iron Man, has the Iron Man mask. It can measure temperature, can look at your swimming records from high school, can know how you can basically analyze the situation, and they will point positive. And when they do, aggressively go to that spot. Or I'll say that it's usually like, get back over here, John, right? Come back to the boat. But when a guide points somewhere, that's when you go from defensive to offensive. That's how I've done it.
I agree with that. I also, when I'm talking to guys, I tell them not to give absolutes. A classic example of this is a safety kayaker.
Yeah.
A safety kayaker will say, if you fall out of the boat, we will come to rescue you. Well, if you've got one safety kayaker and two boats upside down, that's 12 people potentially in the water, 12 to 16 people in the water. That's not necessarily going to happen, is it? So you've got to get the information over. You've got to kind of get it there, but you've got to be a little bit vague. You cannot say, we will come to rescue you. You cannot say, the guide will point. For whatever reason, he might not be able to point. If you've got a flip and you've got a raft and you've got a guide who's in the process of reflipping a boat, climbing on top of the raft, he or she is not going to be able to point. So try not to give absolutes.
So you would say, like, you choose whether you're going to be defensive or offensive.
Yeah.
You teach both and say, based on your situation, if you're close, you can get to a place, swim to it. If you feel like it's a long way to anything, just be defensive.
Yeah. And I also teach defensive aggressive as well if I'm on a shallow river. So a lot of people often teach, defensive swimming, if you fall out, lie on your back, let the river take you. Actually, no. If you're going to do defensive swimming, it can be just as effective as aggressive swimming. If you're on your back, get those arms moving, get kicking those, and get yourself moving. And that's another thing that's not taught too much. It's lie on your back and let the river take you. No, you can just sort yourself out.
Yep. There's a few more questions and comments. Christopher writes, he's a private boater, but he acts like a guide's taking friends, and he thinks it's critical. Yeah. Thanks, Chris. I think that, the intention of these Monday things are for commercial guides, but we realize like this is invaluable for all boaters out there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's communication to clap. It's safe to talk in communication before a trip.
Interesting.
Yeah, but
I think that's so interesting because I feel like so focused on I call it defensive and offensive swimming position. People call it different things. I know you called it whitewater swimming position, but I am very nervous about foot entrapments, and I feel like you can't get a foot entrapment with your feet up out of the water. You can get a butt entrapment, but there's been no recorded cases of a butt entrapment that I know of. So to me, it would seem like the best chance of avoiding a foot entrapment would be getting your feet up out of the water.
Yeah, or another way you could pre-brief it in is say, keep your body, if you're on your front or you're on your back, keep everything as flat to the water as possible. Try not to have anything dangling down. And
that's interesting. I wonder if the swimming was important because you could get rescued faster versus floating.
Yeah.
But I mean, Mark, I agree with your point. Like I don't want people floating. They're not just sitting there floating doing nothing. The moving back with the arms and making motion towards a something is helpful. Just simply floating down the river, I wouldn't want that.
They're a dead weight.
Yeah. Dustin I always tell my guest students don't. Yeah.
Yeah. And we also have the Murphy's Law and O'Reilly's Law. You know the difference between those two?
No.
Murphy's Law is if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So, you know, if you don't tell the boat, if you don't tell the customers if you don't tell the customers about flip, the boat will flip. So that's Murphy's Law. And as a trip leader, I plan for O'Reilly's Law. And O'Reilly's Law is that it simply states that you're prepared for Murphy's Law.
So. Who's O'Reilly?
I don't know. I think I think he works on the Liffey River in Dublin.
I think along these lines, Dustin Aaron says, and I like this a lot, he avoids always and never.
Yeah.
You know, the same thing, like always and never bad. I've been thinking about this a lot lately with always and never. Do you feel like with PFDs, you should always wear a PFD? Is that in the case of an always?
That's an always.
Yeah. So I think it's pretty rare when you do, like, you should rarely use, you should rarely use always and never.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there is an absolute, Dustin, like, you should absolutely wear a PFD. What do you think about that one, Dustin? I think that's the one for me, at least.
Yeah. Always. In European, we're always wearing helmets.
Always wear a helmet. That's the other thing. Man, I got in trouble on that one. Yep. On that Class 2 river, the Vestar, you guys wear helmets?
No, in Europe, you go in rafting, you're wearing a helmet.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You are wearing a helmet. And if you're not wearing a helmet, you're with the wrong people.
Yeah. That's not the case in the US. It's not helmets all the time.
Yeah, if you go back, if you look through the photos in my slides, Iceland, both those rivers are in box canyons, and it's nasty, weak, volcanic ice rock. But volcanic Icelandic rock, you need a helmet more than anything. Yeah.
That's a tough one. You know, that whole discussion about helmets started because we were watching a video of a guy on the Middle Fork of the Salmon in a gearboat just getting Maytagged. They call it Maytag, just in a hole for like 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And it was just super dangerous, and they weren't wearing helmets. And so we were like, yeah, people should probably be wearing helmets. But then I get that they don't wear them all the time. I mean, I get that. But on a river like the Middle Fork, have at least putting them on for the big rapids, I think is important.
It's something we often see in Europe, and you see a lot of rafting pictures from America, and you see people in white water and not wearing helmets, and the Europeans are like, what are they doing? I agree with you on multi-day trips and the long flat stuff. If you're gonna take your helmet off, keep it next to you, and it's up to good guiding to put the helmet back on. Yes, I have done that, and I will do that myself. But seeing somebody doing a day trip on the Ocoee or one of those rivers and then not wearing a helmet, it baffles us Europeans.
What about in Nepal? Is everybody wearing helmets in Nepal?
Yes. Yeah.
On the big multi-day, like the Karnali, they wear the helmets the whole time?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, and I know, what's the reason for not wearing a helmet? Why do we get a lot of companies in America? Why do people not wear helmets on my water trips?
Photos, comfort.
Sorry?
Probably some for the photos. So you can see their faces. Comforts, like also for like to wear a hat so their face is shaded.
Is it a case of I'm not going to flip, so why do I need a helmet?
No, it's a case of
I'm not going to fall out the boat, so I don't need to wear a helmet. Is there a bit of that in there?
No, because people fall. Like on the American River where I worked for a long time, I think they wear helmets now more, but nobody wore helmets when I worked there, and people flipped and fell out all the time. It's more, I think it's a case of there just isn't a history of head injuries. You know, if people are getting head injuries and getting hurt on a regular basis, then it would be a thing. But there's just not, like, head injuries are not a major. It's not a thing that happens that often. You know, it's pretty rare. It did happen here in Oregon on the Deschutes River. A woman in a paddle boat took a paddle grip to the head, and ended up dying. And that changed the law. We have to offer helmets in Oregon, but before there's no requirement. But I think it's just a case of like people. It's just not like based on the data. It's not a major risk as big as other things are.
I think for me, helmets are another one. Is if you've got helmets, if they're red and yellow helmets, if you get a swimmer,
Yeah,
on a red helmet, it's easier to see than someone with.
I love that so much. We do, yeah. I love that, or somebody who just you need to pay attention to. Jason writes, ever since taking my daughter on the river, I wear a helmet on every trip. Awesome. I do too, pretty much. I just understand, that sometimes you want to take it off at times. I'm trying to be, and I think with private boaters, we see a lot of private boaters, especially on multi-days, not wear helmets. I mean, the Middle Fork, the Salmon, the Grand Canyon, the Rogue, the multi-days, they don't have them. And I feel like if you're new to a river or it's at your challenge level, you should definitely wear one. 100%.
I have to wear my helmet to keep the sun off this. So
yeah, I get blonde streaks if I let my hair in the sun, so I kind of want to get a blonde streak.
I used to get that many years ago.
Oh, so we don't wear masks in the pandemic, so you can't expect us to wear helmets.
Were people rafting in masks this year in the States?
No. I mean, there were some examples. Dustin, I was looking through some photos from the summer this morning, and I have a photo of Dustin wearing a mask on a raft, but it was on the Rogue where he's probably not going to swim, and he had a guest sitting right in front of him. So for us, like, if we couldn't create separation in the boats between the guides and the guests, the guides would throw on a mask for their own safety. But if you fall out with a mask on, it's bad. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
If it gets wet, it's useless. So like in the Rogue, the guide typically isn't getting wet. But if you're guiding like class 4, I occasionally saw guides actually on the White Salmon where I live here, where we paddled on the White Salmon a bit when you were here. I would kayak after work, and then I'd watch commercial companies come down, and like 1 in 3 guides is wearing a mask. And that's a river where you can get wet. And so it was happening a little bit.
No helmet, but a mask.
They had helmets. It's the White. It was class 4. It was class 3. And the White Salmon is shallow. They wear helmets. I think we get a bad rap. People wear helmets a lot. It's just like sometimes there's just exceptions to it here and there, mostly multi-day, but people wear helmets a lot. God, we keep coming back to this topic. I gotta throw in the towel. I'm gonna put my helmet on now. I got my helmet right here, ready to go.
The wrong color.
I have a bright one too. I know. You like the brighter colors. Let's check out those jackets though. That's the Palm, the Nevis behind me, and some Mustang jackets. Well, Mark, thanks for joining us. Everybody, thanks for joining in, asking questions. This has been really helpful for me. I think a lot of us too. And yeah, I'm looking forward to having you back on in a couple of weeks. We can talk about some global standards and I think the beauty of this format is it can be a discussion, right? Like, again, there's no, let's say you come up with what you think are global standards. Well, you can present your thoughts and you don't have to present as like, I have the answers. You can present it as, hey, here's what I've been thinking about. Here's what I've seen based on my experience. And then everybody in the audience with experience can like say, what about this? What about that? And we can all learn from it. So I'm super excited for that down the road.
Yeah, I'll get looking at it.
So thanks for joining, Mark. And yeah, if anybody wants to check out what Mark does, his website is, and his company is, I always pronounce it wrong, but let me see if I can get it right. Lapin Koski Kula. Oh, Nick asked to share a PDF of your keynote. Maybe if you
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I'll try to figure out how to share that with everybody. That'd be cool. Yeah, thanks for the reminder, Nick. And thanks for joining us, everyone. Pronounce it one more time for me. Lapin Koski Kula.
Lapin Koski Kula.
Lapin Koski Kula. I'll put a link to his website in the YouTube video below so everybody can check it out. so you don't have to guess it based on my pronunciation.